everybody, welcome back to Exponential Finance, the podcast covering finance, technology and innovation, from our home in Japan and beyond. Sleek is the SMEs all-in-one digital platform, helping over 6,000 plus entrepreneurs to start and manage their businesses. Sleek is registered with the Company Registry and Tax Authorities of Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia and the United Kingdom. They are also regulated by the Monetary Authority of Singapore under the Payment Services Act, and have recently been issued a Major Payment Institution (MPI) license. Sleek effectively operates as the SME's co-pilot for all back-office processing, so that the entrepreneurs can focus on growing their business. And now, please welcome Adrien Barthel, co-founder and Chief Growth Officer at Sleek.
Good afternoon, Adrian. Good to have you on the show. We're talking about Sleek today. When I looked at the company, I was thinking, you're the startup's plumber. You're really providing services around all the corporate administration that makes the startup's life easier, and then they can focus on building their business, but don't have to worry too much about the administrative side. And if that's correct, what does it now mean in practice for the services that you actually provide?
That's exactly it. So yeah, I could not dream of any better description. So yes, we're plumbers of the economy. We're here to build the infrastructure of an economy. So we build legal entities for entrepreneurs, for startups, for SMEs, also for multinationals. So our goal is to help you to set up a legal entity quite quickly and very smoothly in an entirely digital manner. And then we help you for everything related to their annual obligations, such as the annual return, but also the bookkeeping, the tax filings, the audit here in Hong Kong, and also the payroll. So in essence, Sleek is your back office co-pilot. We take care of all the boring, unsexy topics and time-consuming ones that divert you from focusing on building your business. So we like to say that we give back to entrepreneurs so that they can really focus on growing their businesses.
How did you or the co-founders come up with the idea? Did you have a startup and you ran into these problems and were trying to solve it, or was there another driver for this?
So that's purely being really frustrated with that function. So I'm one of the two co-founders, and before I was in the e-commerce space for close to 7 years. 7 years of pain with a company secretary and an accountant, to the point that I decided to stop being French and to just be complaining. And this time I wanted to build that solution. And that's what we did actually in 2017. We started with a very simple platform allowing anyone based globally to register businesses in Singapore. Then after we ventured into accounting, because that was the second biggest pain that we had experienced, and our clients were asking us for help on that on that domain. And then after, yes, we embarked on an expansion journey, opening in Hong Kong in 2019. Australia early 2021, and late last year and early this year, the UK finally.
Do you actually have yourself physical offices in these locations, or can you do this all remotely from Singapore and Hong Kong?
We are in each location a licensed provider, meaning that we need to have certified people and also a certification there. So we are present locally, in these 4 jurisdictions. And this is where most of our people are. So today we're a team of 350 people and spread across 4 locations, in these countries. But also we have countless colleagues that are based in other countries now with the remote work, allowing us to have talents from a bit everywhere.
So 350 is no longer small, and it's maybe it's still startup-ish, but it certainly hit some inflection points along the way. What does it translate to in terms of the number of companies that you support on your platform?
So to date, actually, over the past 5 years, we have registered a total of 500,000 companies. That's actually quite a big number of entrepreneurs that we have helped. The majority of these businesses are really, really super small companies with only one person inside. So it can be your online marketing a consulting firm, a web designer, a tradie in Australia, a plumber Indeed. We have real ones actually under management, and also plenty of investment vehicles in Hong Kong, Singapore, and also the UK as well.
And the services are building blocks, so I can mix and match as I need it. So if I just want to use you for setting up the entity, I can do this. Or if I already have the entity, but I want you to take care of the bookkeeping, I can do that as well.
So you have various entry doors actually to our platform, and it's really like, a services blocks. So you select, the ones that you need. And then, of course, our game is to try to, tell you about like your future needs so that you can actually get back, more time to build your business. So yeah, that's the game.
So the four jurisdictions that we talked about, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, UK, presumably you've chosen them because it's relatively easy electronically, digitally to file company registrations there. And some other markets, like my home market, Japan, might be a bit more difficult and more paper-based. So in terms of geographical expansion, where would you see yourself next once from the perspective of where maybe some of your clients are and you haven't covered the market yet, or where you think it's relatively straightforward to also enter?
I'll first go back on, why we started in Singapore and why we evolved in Hong Kong, Australia, and the UK. It's very simple. So Singapore, it's just because we were based there, and that's where the frustration came up. So we decided to start there. And after Singapore being a common law country, accepting, digital signature for, governance operations, we then had a platform that was common law friendly, aligned with common law, digital, like a jurisdiction. So that's why we went to Hong Kong and then Australia and then the UK. So now we're also looking at other common law markets. And of course, yes, other more challenging markets, such as, for instance, Japan. The biggest prerequisite that we have is the acceptance of the digital signature. Otherwise, there is no point in actually building, a digital tool if you actually cannot deliver the essence of it, a digital experience. It would be a bit odd to launch a Sleek, in a country where you only can get documents wet inked. It kill, the digital efficiency and the whole experience actually. But yes, we're looking at a series of other markets that are really booming. But unfortunately, we need to wait for them to actually be a little bit more friendly around the technological side.
So you should have pretty good market intelligence as well, having started before the pandemic, now having gone through the pandemic. Where did you see the biggest impact in terms of maybe activity going down because of the pandemic, and which markets were holding up relatively well?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the really cool thing that we actually got from being in that business, is that exactly what businesses are thriving, what businesses are just plummeting. I will just blow up an open door by saying that F&B businesses, we saw them going down within the 2 weeks after the start of the pandemic. These are businesses with very, very low cash availability. They hold it the fort for 2 or 3 weeks for the vast majority, and then just a couple of months for the rest. So that was one of the points. Yeah, we saw really the gig economy really going up, especially for instance here in Hong Kong, when Cathay Pacific, so the airline, fired close to half of its staff. Just after, we saw hundreds of people reaching out to us to launch finally their own little marketing consulting firm or an e-commerce site. Everyone was actually taking the time to actually launch the side hustle that they had before, or the idea that they had before. So it was quite interesting to be there at that point, because we spoke to all these people that somehow, had closed the chapter in the big corporate. And now we're head down going for their entrepreneurial journey. So it was really humbling to be surrounded by all these people and helping them to jump off the cliff to finally start something on their own. And last year, actually, we released a survey. So the Sleek SME Index, in which we're basically sharing a lot of things about how SMEs and how small businesses have actually gone through the storm, and analyzing their spend, how they have hired people, how much they were paying people, and so on. That was really, really interesting to see the spending habits of all these companies. And yeah, one of the key thing was a massive increment. So I think it was plus 350% on the spend of telco softwares or communication softwares. So it was back then when Zoom, their stock was at a few $100s. So we saw it because all of these companies actually, they bought plenty of subscriptions. But then this year we saw that everything was stopped. Also, as such, you will see the Zoom stock going down as well, because everyone, outside of Hong Kong, obviously, has resumed the face-to-face meetings and is not using as much the digital solutions.
Obviously, one revenue source is the fees for your direct services, but given that you have such a large community, 500,000 entities created and many on the platform, is there a B2B2B type of model where you can provide Zoom as an intermediary and you kind of get a cut because you have such a brilliant access to these SME community? Is that something you've implemented?
That's something that we have done since the beginning. So we're offering around 50,000 USD of perks to our clients. So yes, we have like preferred pricing and really like exclusive deals with a number of SaaS companies. Yeah, whether it's a CRM, a Zoom, a payment gateway, Shopify, you name it. We have actually like some preferred pricing with them, obviously because they love SMEs and they love small companies. And we want to spoil our clients just to make sure that they go through their first year successfully. We think that actually if you're able to make it through your first year, then you'll stay with us for a couple more years. And obviously as a business, that's actually in our interest to have you, make it through your first year. So yeah, we're spoiling you. We're really here to push you throughout the first year, just to, position you, setting you up for success. Sorry.
Have you seen companies grow so fast that they essentially graduated from your platform because they themselves became 200 people and then they can hire their own accountants? Have you seen this? And secondly, is how do you continue growing with these type of customers so you keep them longer on your platform?
One thing that we're really good at is to know what we're able to do. And we're also, very humble and very aware of what we cannot do. So if you're BMW and you come to Sleek saying, oh, I love your platform, I'd love to use it, we'll say no. Although, it would be like a great brand and so on. But just simply because we're not done and shaped for such a big organization. So the same goes, with clients that, especially like super small startups that actually start with us. So at the very beginning, it's actually very easy and very handy for us to serve them. And then at some point, they become really like too big and actually they demand, a level of commitment on our end that we cannot sustain with our pricing model. So at that point, we're very happy to close the operations and then direct them to a bigger and better suited service provider. I often use the analogy of starting to fly on EasyJet, and then once you have enough money to actually fly private or in business, fine, you change comes, but you never ask the EasyJet stewardess for a reclining seat at 180 degrees and some champagne because it simply doesn't work. You cannot get the private jet at the price of the EasyJet. It's actually the same. We cannot provide, the service that an MNC or like a huge Series C or D startup actually requires when actually we take care of really small companies. So we're very humble with the phase of growth and the kind of companies that we can attract in our nets and the kind of companies that we cannot, go and support. The good news is that, SMEs are making close to 85 to 90% of every single global economy. So yeah, the market is big enough for us actually, and we're quite happy where we are.
I'm sure you're pushing the boundary on functionality or complexity all the time. So it's just a timing question, I would think. Similarly, just recently it was great news. They got the MPI, the Major Payment Institution license by the MAS in Singapore, right, which is clearly an expansion of functionality and licensing. First of all, congratulations for that. And secondly, we need to explain what that means for the services that you can provide.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a great milestone, actually. So just to explain a bit, what happened, why the MPI license? Because you might say, okay, you're an accounting firm. Why are you like in FinTech now? It's very simple, actually. A few years ago, we realized that having a company was one thing, but then our clients were really struggling at, opening a bank account. In Singapore, like a country worldly known as a super efficient place, it takes you roughly like a month to a month and a half to actually open, an SME bank account, which for us was like extremely embarrassing. Because if you're able to like register a business in half an hour with us, getting an account in a month and a half, it's almost insulting. So we decided to actually start building our very own FinTech stack. And today, actually on Sleek, you're able to register a business and to get a business account multi-currency with a card right away, actually. So we want you to actually go from an idea to an operating company in just a matter of hours, when before you had to take a month and a half and speak to 3 different people and also gain a lot of gray hair. Obviously, that was something quite innovative back then, and it took us literally 2 years to actually reach to the level of compliance and of technology that required for the MPI. And the MPI actually grants us the ability to handle as many clients as we want with limitless capability in terms of transactions. When before, under the standard payment institution license that we had, we actually could only handle volumes that were much lower, and with a cap at 5 million Singapore dollar per month actually.
Ultimately, the gates are open for further growth in Singapore for Singapore registered entities trying to do something similar in Hong Kong then as well.
The vision that we have is really this platform to register a company, getting a business account, and then have the third pillar, with the accounting and the compliance. So yeah, we're looking at rolling this out, rolling the vision in every single market where we are. Obviously, it's quite complex given that, in each market you need to apply for the relevant license, and it's taking a bit of time. But, we like running marathons. It's, slow and steady. So yeah, there we go.
And it increases the stickiness substantially, right, for the clients. If it's not only the accounting, it's also the banking relationship, the payments, all the expense processing. Pretty sticky.
That's right. I think it really increases, the level of service that we provide to them, and really how useful you are to them. So with the FinTech angle, we're now becoming really like the Swiss Army knife for small businesses, because they can literally find everything they need actually on our platform. And as such, also, we launched a corporate insurance service in Singapore and also in Hong Kong. So now we're able to actually sell through partners the whole set of business insurance that you need, given that it's also required in many cases. Whether you're a one-man band kind of company or a huge one, business insurance is also at the heart of a lot of businesses.
If I wanted to open a company now in Singapore, obviously, I need to create the entity. With the entity, I can hire people, but you would do the accounting, you would do the payroll for that. Is there anything I need to do externally to you, or do you have it covered at this point?
We have everything actually ready to welcome you, whether you want to be physically based in Singapore or not. Actually, we have a lot of clients that we have never seen ever and that are based globally in all 5 continents. We have everything you need, whether from the very simple incorporation to the full suite of service covering 100% of your back office.
That's pretty cool, actually. The model is fantastic, and
thank you.
Although you're scaling still with the MPI license and so on, but the numbers you have already behind you in terms of the entities created, and every entity created is a new relationship or a deeper relationship with clients, is tremendous. Ultimately, I think the question for any entrepreneur is always, what's the end game? You have lots of runway in terms of jurisdiction you haven't covered yet. Maybe some other functionality that you want to build, complexity that we talked about to support maybe larger clients. Is this going to be a buyout by another professional services player eventually down the road, or what would be your exit?
That's a good question. The options are open, but we don't think about it as we used to, joke, as we like to joke about it in French. So when I shave in the morning, I don't think about it, every day. So it's more we have a vision, and we're right now, still chasing that vision. We have accomplished it in Singapore, having the whole stack, launched there. Now we have 3 other markets to actually do it, and I think only that will, think about it. But right now, that's more the mindset that we have at Sleek. So. It has been 5 years. That's quite a long journey, I would say, compared to all the startup noise that you see from Europe and the US. But we're really happy and incredibly satisfied with the team that we have actually built across these 4 markets. It's not something that we really intensively think of. We're more after the big objective of launching our vision in 3 other markets actually.
And you had a Series A last year, 60 million, I think it was.
It was 25 in December, yes, in 2 rounds, basically.
Impeccable timing, right? Still before kind of valuations hit the wall a bit. So excellent. You have a pretty steady, to say the least, business, and you have cash flows through that. So was that a strategic decision to do the Series A at that point? Kind of having maybe sight of the MPI license and what it would open up? Or I think what I'm asking is, was it absolutely necessary, or was it now, after 4 years, taking some significant amount of external money as well?
I think, it's never necessary, but it just goes back to the plan that you have and how aggressively you want to expand, into new markets. So We took the road of like aggressive expansion and aggressive growth. So this is why actually we worked on that, last year. So obviously, it takes a couple of months to close. We certainly like are very happy and with the timing. We certainly did not see like the tech winter coming, and I think like no one really like saw it coming. At least in December it was not even in the press. It was more like in Q1 this year. We're very happy with what we have done. Incredibly thankful for the shareholder, the investors, sorry, that have joined us end of last year, and now we're actually like rolling, the like building and executing the plan, and thankfully, we're not impacted by the tech winter, and we're really like laser focused on building what we do best.
Final question maybe around Hong Kong, which gets a bit political. Of course, you've commented already a bit around what happened with Cathay, and it gives you a surge in registrations on the platform, actually. But it's always the battle a bit between Singapore and Hong Kong as city-states previously for primacy, especially in the FinTech space. Tokyo always is waving from the side and saying, oh, we want to be global financial city as well, but it doesn't quite work out this way yet. And despite everything that happened in Hong Kong over the last 2 years with the securities law, with the lockdowns, I'm just a remote observer, but it doesn't seem we have big flows of people. Maybe there's funds flowing that you don't see necessarily, but companies moving from Hong Kong to Singapore or Tokyo for that matter and again, you're in a prime position to have like business intelligence around that. Do you see startups saying, oh, we're going to reincorporate in Singapore, we're leaving Hong Kong, gets a bit too tight here, we're moving to Singapore?
I think that's a very good question, and I've been questioned about that for like the past 2 years. The most vocal like transfers have been for like the big Fortune 500 companies, whether they're Americans or Europeans moving to Singapore or moving to Seoul or Tokyo. But these companies are not a lot actually, and they don't represent the vast majority of the market. So yes, when you hear L'Oréal, like moving 600 people from Hong Kong to Singapore, it makes a lot of noise. 600 people just like, telling their friends, the medias and so on about their move. On the other hand, like you still have the same number of SMEs here in Hong Kong. And with the surge of, the e-commerce everywhere in every single country because of the pandemic, now you also need to buy a lot of things. And we are, building every single day I would say vehicles, like entities for actually Amazon sellers, for instance, that are based in China or based elsewhere, for them to actually be able to buy very easily into China. So although, yes, the news, the ongoing news for Hong Kong have been quite dark if you were to read, Western newspapers that are outside of Hong Kong. But then when you look at the absolute numbers of companies being registered, it's actually increasing. It doesn't mean, sorry, that all of these companies are physically based in Hong Kong, but we have a lot of clients that are based globally and that register businesses in Hong Kong in order to operate here and to purchase, very easily items from China. So yes, there was a lot of noise about the transfers, but no, in reality, it's not like half of the 1.2 million companies of Hong Kong have just like, shut it down their operations and moved it to Singapore. No.
If it happens, then it's more long-term thing that whatever out of Asia, the startups looking for an Asia launch pad, and then they choosing maybe Singapore over Hong Kong in the future. But for that trend to play out and be noticeable, it will take a few years, right?
Exactly. And then after, like if you look at the startups, so there are like various surveys here in Hong Kong that say that the startups represent around like a community big of 2,000, 3,000 companies. But it's not a lot. It's really small actually as a market. So Hong Kong would be more like an SME sort of market and a financial services market with all the traditional players, banks, investment banks, family offices, and private equity firms. Singapore could be more like a young market for tech with VCs, a lot of startups, so close to 30,000 there. So it's really like two different markets. So I don't think, like today the comparison still lives because they have taken a really like, different direction. So I'd say that, both markets are really like making the most of the crisis, because if you look at the banks in Hong Kong, they never had such an amazing year as of last year. This year is a bit different, but last year was really like, they had the time of their lives. I mean, I have a lot of friends in finance and banks. They were very happy.
Very interesting market color. Really appreciate it. I've been following like what's coming out of whatever it's called, the Hong Kong Department of Trade, and trade promotion and so on. And they have their reports and they look actually pretty solid, to say the least. I think, right, China is not going to go away as an economic power. And as long as Hong Kong can retain some gateway functionality in and out, Hong Kong has a very specific role to play for years to come. And maybe that goes more into the Greater Bay Area, but that would be good as well, right?
Exactly. No, I'm a firm believer that, Hong Kong is far from, being like a city completely left abandoned. No, at the opposite, it's still like, roaring. And there is a limitless potential with China next door, the Greater Bay Area. And we did just open the airport because we're a bit sick of not being able to travel, but that's another story.
No, it's wonderful. I think it's super interesting what you do, and clearly it helps people a lot just getting started. So I wish you came to Japan as well, but unfortunately, I think we have a bit more to fight with the electronic signature and the web anchor stamps, etc. So it's not quite as easy, but I think the service, given the focus that the country has also on making the whole startup life easier, I think the service would resonate quite well here in the community as well.
Yeah, it's a market that we really like and that we look from afar. But like we stay vigilant. Obviously, it's a booming market with plenty of company creations every week. There is no prerequisite condition for us. Unfortunately, we're not able to consider it, I would say.
It was a super interesting conversation. Thank you very much, Adrien.
Likewise, thank you very much, Norbert. I really enjoyed the discussion.